Different people have different devices. Of the ones that have promise, there's certain themes that keep re-emerging. The first theme is torsion physics. Torsion physics is a fancy way of saying something that spins like this and something that spins like this. Think of it as like an hourglass shape. I think that it has to do with it representing the way energy moves in the universe. At the biggest levels, like the galaxy, it's a spiral. A tornado on Earth is this vortex motion. Our DNA is a stranded spiral. A second theme is plasma. A lightning bolt is plasma, right? The spark gap in a car is plasma. So plasma is the fourth state of matter. Solid water is ice. Add more energy, it melts and becomes water. Add more energy, it becomes steam. And then if you were to add even more energy, say through running an electric current through that steam or through any gas, you end up with plasma. You can think of it as maybe this liminal state or in-between state between the physical world and the non-physical world, whatever that is. There's some evidence emerging that plasma can provide a shielding of inertia. So if you imagine that you're a UFO and you need to zip around at crazy speeds, you can't pump the brakes too fast, otherwise everyone's going to slam into the windshield, right? But if you had some sort of inertial shield around the craft, i.e. like a plasma shield, you might be able to eliminate the inertia surrounding that and keep the occupants safe. I think this is why the UFOs seem to glow. Plasma glows. A third theme is that of the ether. The conventional or mainstream understanding of the base level of reality is maybe the quantum sea, tiniest particles all bumping into each other. The ether conceives of this differently. It says that there's a kind of a fluid geometry that is the base layer of physical reality, and that to understand that fluid geometry is to be able to really understand electricity, magnetism, and gravity. And this, according to Tesla and others, is the key to really understanding what he was getting at with all of his wireless transmission of energy stuff. But I believe that we're going to see something like a return of the ether. It won't be called that, but it'll be something like that that's going to enable us to make much more progress in these areas in the coming century.
This gentleman, he had a car that would run on water, but it had to be modified.
A local inventor has discovered a way, hear this, to use water to run your car.
It's a major breakthrough that will no doubt make motorists happy. And as Ralph Robinson explains, the Pentagon is also showing lots of interest in this project.
And he always kept that secret. He had a patent that he falsified the voltage and the frequency, cycles per second, because he didn't want anyone to reproduce it and leapfrog him financially. Again, this crazy inventor syndrome. And what happened, and when he passed away, there was a whole warehouse full of floppy disks and papers and everything, and his heirs wanted to sell it off. What people didn't realize is that this car was the least important thing Stan Meyer had. He had a toroid, and the toroid was a donut-shaped electromagnetic device that had had a national security order slapped on it. Because I was going to get it and openly disclose it.
But though the scientific establishment may have ignored the likes of Meyer, the powerful military-industrial complex certainly hasn't. Over the past 10 years, Meyer says he's been quietly approached by many influential organizations who would never admit publicly to their involvement with him.
This was a disaster. If we had a few $100,000 we were going to offer, but we made it clear we were going to open source it. Well, they had a group, an engineering group from Michigan come in, who had a lot more money because they had a big backer. And they were going to monetize it, keep it secret, try to repatent it, all the usual crazy ideas, which would be great if you're just developing a new software program, but not something that's going to change the world forever. Can't do it. They were working on a couple years. I get this hysterical call. He says, Dr. Greer, we need your help. We need your help. He says, they're on the run for their lives. They've been sabotaged. They've had death threats. And my advice was, forget about Gollum. and be in my ring, and my precious ring. In this case, it was literally a precious ring. Just put it out there. I will help spread it. We will build these up independently, have labs test it, and you cannot put that toothpaste back in the tube. You squeeze it hard enough. He says, yes, you're right. It's probably the only way. But they think they can find a safe country to go to. I said, you're going to have to go to another star system, my friend. I literally said that. No way that's going to happen. So sure enough, I find out a few months later, I'm meeting with a high-tech guy in Orange County. That entire team was assassinated. The one survived. It was just crying like a baby in this man's office.
Technology shows that we can release energy up to beyond 2.5 million barrels of oil per gallon of water and do it safely. So it gives us the ability to not only sustain and maintain the economies of the world, but also give us the abilities to handle the environmental pollution problems at the same time.
This sort of encapsulates, 5 or 10 of the suppression techniques, all the way from murder to crazy inventor syndrome, falsifying your patent, trying to make money first instead of proving the science first, etc. And of course, he took this to his grave. He was poisoned and killed at a Cracker Barrel. An ignominious death, if ever I heard one.
Stan Meyer's water engine points us to a deeper mystery concerning energy in our universe: microscopic ball lightning. The late physicist Ken Shoulders developed a technology called charge clusters, which are likened to ball lightning. When they are discharged, they actually tap into the zero-point energy field. This is where most of the power in Stan Meyer's device was coming from. Like Stan, Ken Shoulders faced terrible suppression.
And so I met with this CEO, and he says, yes, they approved a $5 million grant from DOE so we could develop this further, because one of the effects it had that they were really pursuing was putting low-level, initially, radioactive waste in these charge clusters, and it would cause isotopes that were non-radioactive to be created. What does this mean? You can clean up all the radioactive waste. However, the phenomenon, the reason it was doing it, was that it was actually activating, as it were, this baseline energy field that's at the fabric of space and time. And that's what they didn't want out. So in the rarest of events, that grant was published, and these vicious people who want to keep all this stuff secret went into the Secretary of Energy's office and said, pull that grant. And they pulled it.
Another technology to harness the power of ball lightning is being developed by a team of engineers in Florida. They have successfully tested several prototypes that allow any internal combustion engine to run mostly on water.
It's a little quicker, huh?
This is a phenomenal system, patented, but it runs internal combustion engines on water with a little bit of gasoline in it so you don't have to modify the engine. It won't rust. What this means is, with Stan Meyer, you really had to have a different kind of engine and spark plug and all that. This conventional spark plug engine, all of it, because it has enough of the lubricant and oil in it that it won't just freeze up the engine. And this is really what he's doing. Stan Meyer, this device, and many of the others, Ken Shoulders charge clusters, they're creating these small microscopic ball lightnings that when they discharge are tapping into that zero-point energy field and creating the motive force.
Boom! That's why the concussion from the thunderclap is so huge. There's a huge amount of energy, and it's actually sourced from the vacuum energy. All the dots connected. This is what's happening, right? So we need to make the thunderclap engine.
Many times breakthroughs are made because the inventor or the scientist was inspired by looking at nature. The same systems and the same mechanisms that exist in nature that you can see can also exist in the devices that you build. So by trying to mimic that, you can tap into the intelligence that nature has already shown you when it comes to being efficient with the energy transmission mechanisms.
Another current technology was recently investigated by Dr. Greer and his engineering team at an undisclosed location in the Arizona desert.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 magnesium alloy specially configured plates. This thing's the size of a nice-sized shoebox. The circuitry you see on the right is a misdirect because the guy has crazy inventor syndrome and thinks he can keep it secret and make $1 trillion.
You don't interfere with the big, powerful people. You don't put them out of business. They're still in business. They still have those 50-year leases on the lines and all the power transformers. You'd be able to get one of my power plants, just replace a coal-fired plant, you know. But it wouldn't be big news or anything because I'm just selling the electricity to them, okay? And then they're going to say, wow, we're making more money at this plant than we are the others. So they're going to put them around, you see? They're not going to let me in. They're going to fight me tooth and nail. But I'm going to be very sneaky about it.
This thing, for 3 years, had been sitting in this near a chicken coop in his backyard out in the desert, putting out 3 kilowatts of power continuously, and we cranked it up to 5 kilowatts. No input power. And it's running off the magnetic flux of the space around it that he can tune to any place on the earth so it's correct, and boom. This thing, solid state, no moving parts. We just saw this. But he's a textbook case of making every wrong decision. Tried to patent it. Well, you'll see in a moment what happened. He ended up getting put in prison for a week. He has had sabotage, death threats, murder of people around him.
Yeah, I spent 8 days in that jail. When I went before the court, the judge said, come here, Doug. And he says, read this. You sign it, you go home. You don't sign it, you go to jail. And all it was is I will not ever in my lifetime, ever, through me or anyone else, if anybody else was manufacturing these, I'll go to jail.
And here's the secrecy order he was slapped with. But look at the date. 1984. It's almost 40 years ago. So, doing the same thing, patent office, people think this is a myth. No, here's a secrecy order.
See, so I don't want to go through that again. Scared my family and everybody. So now what we're going to do, we're going to be very quiet. I'm going to build my 1 megawatt. It'll take 2.5 years to build it. Because it's very complicated. I gotta acclimate it to the earth.
Technologies like this and countless others will never see the light of day without a radically new strategy. Dr. Greer is preparing to launch a multi-centered, state-of-the-art research and development lab that will develop zero-point energy technology, live streaming 24/7 for security and transparency. All research results, data, and plans would be released to the world open source, freely available to the public and the scientific community. This will require broad public support to make this a reality. With this strategy, zero-point energy is achievable, but it is only half of what has been suppressed.
Now we get into the really cool stuff. Look at the dates. 1919, Pakowski-Frost experiment, where they actually had high-frequency systems where things levitated, defying gravity. And then T. Townsend Brown, and he had very high-voltage systems, electrogravitic, they call it, where high voltage would cause this lift effect and would actually create, if you will, a bubble, an electromagnetic field that would allow an object to move at enormous speeds and free of the forces of gravity, what's called gravity control.